Hey there, welcome in. Gabe DeArmond here, the publisher of PowerMizzou.com, live with you on the Every True Tiger Insider podcast. This is our weekly podcast where we're going to talk to a different Mizzou athlete every single week in partnership with the Every True Tiger Foundation. ETTF is Mizzou's preferred NIL collective. That's the way that athletes across campus are making a little bit of money off their name, image, and likeness for charitable time and contributions, things like that. You can contribute to ETTF at everytruetiger.org. We've also got a special Power Mizzou arm within ETTF. The details of that are on our message board. It's raised a little over $80,000 for Mizzou's NIL efforts over the last 2 months or so. And plenty of things that you guys can get involved with. We encourage you to do that. Again, everytruetiger.org. And like I said, every week we bring a different Mizzou athlete onto the show. And I'm fairly confident in saying that we've got our first podcast guest who is a two-time national champion on the show, wrestler Keegan O'Toole joining us. Keegan, how you doing this morning, man?
I'm doing very well. Just got out of church and glad to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you. So let's start with that. Has it gotten old yet hearing people introduce you as two-time national champion Keegan O'Toole?
That's something that I don't really notice too much. It's definitely it's a big honor, and the fact that I'm able to even have the opportunity to go compete at something like the national tournament is awesome. But yeah, it's not something I notice too much, but definitely am very appreciative when I hear it.
Yeah, I'm curious. We'll get into your backstory a little bit and let people know kind of how you came to Mizzou and all that. But when your name, probably something you appreciate down the road a little bit more than maybe you do today. But when your name is mentioned with Ben Askren and Jaden Cox, I've got to imagine that's pretty good company to be in.
I mean, yeah, I still got a long way to go to be up there with those guys because they've done such amazing things. Ben being my coach since I was 12 years old, and then Jaden Cox obviously being a Olympic bronze medalist, multiple time world champ. So I got a little ways to go, but I'm chasing greatness the best that I can.
Yeah, well, you got a couple more years to add to it here in Columbia, but what we've kind of done on this show with the previous athletes that we've had is I want to go back to the beginning. Like, tell me when you got into wrestling. How old were you, and how'd you kind of get started?
So I was introduced to wrestling from my dad because I was a very energetic, very high intensity kid. I would get in trouble a lot at school for tackling kids, stuff like that. The neighbors' kids, their parents would always be really mad, and it was kind of just something that my dad was like, "Hey, let's try it. Maybe he'll enjoy it. Let's get some energy out of him." And he had wrestled maybe a year, barely at all when he was little. He wrestled a little bit in junior high and stuff like that. So, but I went to my first practice. I think I was at 5 years old, and then went home crying. So it's probably not for me now. And then a year later we tried again. And now I'm here now. Took off with it. About 6 years old is when I started.
Okay, so I know what 5 and 6 year old like football and basketball are like. It's just kids kind of running around with absolutely no idea what they're doing. What is 6-year-old wrestling like?
6-year-old wrestling is just a bunch of little kids running around and laughing at each other. Some of them are going to cry. Some of them get hurt. Some of them run over to their parents because they're big babies. Some kids get thrown into the wall, thrown on their heads. But I think that's why I liked it. I could just grab someone and throw them on the ground and not get yelled at and get encouraged for it. So I flourished there.
And the beauty of your sport is it's designed so that you can do that against guys that are also your size, right? You're not 165 pounds on a football field necessarily trying to do that to somebody.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, there's 10 weight classes in college wrestling, 125, 33, 41, 49, 57, 65, all that jazz. But yeah, no, usually pretty much everyone you wrestle is going to be around the similar weight because it is a very weight does matter. It's definitely a big advantage if you're a lot heavier, just sheer amount of force, power, strength, all that type of stuff.
Now, a lot of Mizzou fans over the last 10, 20 years have become a lot more educated about wrestling and have become wrestling fans because of what this program has done. But we may have a lot of listeners who aren't as familiar with it. So when you were going through wrestling as a kid, like how is that? I mean, are you traveling around? Are there clubs? What's that like when you're like a 9, 10-year-old in wrestling?
Yeah, so I was at a club in Illinois for a little bit just because I lived in Milwaukee, so that travel was like probably an hour and 20 minutes, and um, definitely was more the intense side when I was little, which probably was not the best for a young kid trying to enjoy the sport, but I was at a club there, and then when Ben Askren opened his place in 2011, my dad was a fireman for the city of Milwaukee, and they had a rule where you had to live within like a certain, you had to live within the city, and then so they changed that rule to, you can move within 15 miles outside of the city line, and so I went to AWA, the Askren Brothers Wrestling for like a couple years while I was living in Milwaukee, and then we moved out to where they were located just because it was a nice area. That's where I ended up going to high school, same high school as Ben Askren. And it just that's how that kind of worked out for me when I was younger.
So did you? I mean, the first time when you go to Ben's club, do you already kind of know about Ben and Max and who they are?
Not too much, actually, just because I was so young. I knew of them. I didn't really know what they did. I was only 9, or wait, when I went there, I was probably 11 or 10 years old. So they were a little bit before. I remember watching Max Askren win his last NCAA title in 2010, but Ben was, he graduated college in 2007, and at 6 years old, I'm not, all I'm concerned about is, other stuff. So yeah, I definitely learned real quick though.
Yeah. Do you remember like your first kind of interactions with Ben at all?
Yeah, I remember walking into the club, and I got there like probably 30, 40 minutes early because, we had to sign paperwork, all the type of stuff.
Mhm.
And I remember walking into his office, and the first thing he said to me was, "So you're going to come by us for a while now, huh?" And I was like a little kid, and I was like, "Yeah." And I definitely was nervous, but they welcomed me in with open arms, and I made friends immediately. And I had known a couple of the kids that already went there that I wrestled with when I was, a little bit younger,
Mhm.
that I grew up wrestling, or I guess I was still growing up with him, but that I had wrestled during that time. So, that was the first words he said to me. And then now it's like me and him have an amazing relationship. I'm super, super grateful for that.
We'll get into that a little bit in a minute, but when did you kind of realize you went through high school, you won 4 straight titles. I think I saw your record was 110-5. At what point did you realize, hey, this is something that can take like that I can do beyond high school that can take me somewhere?
I always thought that I was decent at wrestling when I was growing up. And then I really didn't expect, actually my freshman year of high school, me and my dad, I was honestly growing up, I was like, I want to be a Navy SEAL. Like, I thought that was so sweet.
Okay.
And then after my freshman year, I placed at the Fargo National Tournament, and then won state that year, placed again at the Fargo National Tournament. And then my sophomore year is when I start getting exposed to the fact that, like, hey, maybe I can wrestle in college. And the fact that I would possibly be able to, have college paid for was like a really cool idea. I didn't think that I was like at that level yet. And then it just kind of sprung itself on me when I was at the end of my sophomore year of high school. And I was like, wow, like this is becoming a reality. I had never dreamed of it, I guess. I always thought it was really cool, but it wasn't like, I want to, like, wrestle for a really, really good Division I program. It was always like, all right, well, like, it would be really cool to wrestle for Mizzou. That's where Ben and Max went. But, when you're that young, it's like, you don't think that you're going to be that good someday.
What is the recruiting process like in wrestling? I mean, when did you start hearing from coaches and it kind of started to get serious?
Um, Recruiting started for me pretty early. I say my first conversation with Coach Smith was as a freshman in high school. He came down to do a camp. But then my first actually conversation about me coming to school there was the end of my sophomore year, I believe.
Mhm.
And then I was also talking to the coaches at the University of Wisconsin, just because that's where I was from. So just conversations with them, talking about, why they want me to come to their program, all that type of stuff. And then eventually, pretty early on in my end of my sophomore year summer, I was, pretty set on going to Mizzou.
Okay, so you made that decision early. I mean, what were
Yeah, very,
those
very
last
quick.
couple what were those last couple years like? Did you have, because obviously, hey, that area of the country, there's a lot of really good wrestling programs between you and Missouri. Did you have other coaches trying to convince you to
Yeah,
turn
there's
away?
there's definitely that aspect of college coaches who didn't really care that I was committed to Mizzou, and kind of put it aside the fact that, hey, this kid's already committed, but they're still, they want what they want. And college recruiting is it's a business more than it actually is, trying to get athletes. In my opinion, I've seen the worst of it. I've seen the best of it. I've seen what coaches have done to go to get athletes or try to get athletes. And sometimes it can be a little bit sickening, but that's why I say it's a business, because sometimes business isn't always pretty.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you said you were sold on Missouri pretty quickly, and obviously, hey, the relationship you have with the Askrens, and they know Coach Smith and all that. Did Coach Smith have to sell you too hard?
No. I mean, he sold me pretty easy. I mean, I was also very influenced by Ben and Max, because the way that they trained us was how, that's what Mizzou was like. And, that's why I loved it. Was I go home and I have such good similarities to my training at home, compared to like college. It's they run on the same parallels basically. And that's what I loved about it. And I just felt at home.
A lot of people watching this obviously watched Ben and Max as wrestlers, and we've seen kind of what they've done since. What were they like as coaches? I mean, how intense are those guys every day?
They're actually a lot more laid back than you would think.
Yeah.
Super passionate about, the development of their wrestlers, and want what's best for them. But they want us to really learn how to have fun and enjoy wrestling, and really find a passion for ourselves, because ultimately a coach can, tell me all this, but if I'm not really in it for myself, then I should just stop. So really giving me the ability to be the strongest person that I can be mentally and physically, because I struggled a lot with that in high school, the mental side of wrestling. And he just helped me grow. And I mean, the Askren brothers, but also Coach John Messenbrink, who most people don't know, but he was the starter of all that. Like, he was the one who raised Ben and Max from when they were in high school. And so he was the one that was training me a majority of the time at Askren when I was first there, because Ben was off fighting. So Coach Messenbrink too was someone that was unbelievably helpful in my development, just gave me a love of wrestling. And he might be more intense than Ben and Max themselves. He loves it and he gets into it. So he was someone that really put the fire in me.
You mentioned the mental part of it, and I saw a video, and I don't know at what point in your career it was, but basically that Ben said, "Look, the only person that doesn't believe you're going to be great at this is you." So, so tell me about that kind of process, and kind of developing that belief that you could go do what you've done.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I struggled with when I was in high school was the mental side of wrestling. I always knew that I was good. I had good skills. Technically, I thought I was really good, but I just could never figure it out up here. Like, it was always something holding me back, and I would always just be in tough matches and think I could do really good, or this guy's, supposed to beat me. This guy's not supposed to beat me. And I would always be doing really good. And I'd have flashes of high level wrestling, but then all of a sudden it would just kind of shut down. And for a while, I didn't know why that was happening. And then at one tournament, it all kind of resonated with me. I sat down with Ben, and he kind of talked me over after the tournament, told me like, "Hey, you're your own worst enemy. Like, you're really good, but you don't believe it. And until you do, you're just going to keep being average." And so, I mean, it's not like I hadn't heard those words before. It was just, as a coach, you never know when it's going to click with the athlete. And that's something that I'm learning too. It's like, if I try to help my teammates, no matter how many times I tell them something, it might not click until the 25th, 30th time that I tell them. And so for me, it was like that timing just was perfect. I was starting to get older, so I was starting to mature. I had just taken a couple losses at a tournament, and it just it clicked. And then after that, I felt like I made a very large jump in my wrestling.
So your senior year in high school, you finished 49-0, you win your fourth straight state title. You come to college. What are you expecting when you get to college as a true freshman? I mean, are you expecting, hey, this is a huge leap, or are you thinking, hey, I've been doing this. I'm gonna come in and just keep this rolling?
Yeah, I pulled up to Columbia, Missouri, August 22nd, 2020, and we were unsure just because of COVID if we were going to
Right.
have a season or something like that. But we just got in the room and we started grinding. We were wrestling hard. We were probably one of the only teams that was allowed in their wrestling room at the time, which we were super lucky that Coach Smith was able to get that for us. Um, I hadn't competed it from end of my senior year in high school until November. So that was almost a full year of like not competing. And so we had the U20. They brought back the U20 World Team Trials in Omaha, Nebraska. Unfortunately, they weren't going to take a team overseas just because of COVID. But that was our first tournament that I was able to wrestle under Mizzou, and I absolutely torched it. I didn't have any close matches. I ended up winning Outstanding Wrestler of the tournament, made the junior world team for my first time ever, and I had taken second the year before. So I just saw the improvement right away, and I wasn't planning on wrestling my freshman year just because I was going to redshirt, but then they made the rule that was like, oh, this is a free year of eligibility. So, Coach Smith wanted to put me in, and I was originally starting at 57, but then they put out our original 57 starter, Jarrett, and I was like, all right, yeah, it's just not my time right now. But then Coach Smith's like, nope, you're going up a weight class, you're going up to 165, and I mean that was best thing for me just because I was growing, I was getting taller, and was still putting on some size, so it worked out really well.
The whole COVID year, I'm interested. I mean, how close did you guys feel like you were to, hey, this just isn't going to happen this year? Because a lot of sport, obviously every sport, it was kind of like, hey, nobody knows. But wrestling, I mean, you're in direct contact with these people, right? And so probably, I imagine even your sport, there was a little bit more concern about how can we do this? I mean, was it a real danger? You guys thought, hey, we're not going to get to do this year?
Yeah, there was definitely that feeling of uncertainty, but at the same time, I just tried not to let it bother me. I went through a lot of I wouldn't say depression, but I was definitely down in the dumps for a while just because of homesickness, COVID. Life was just boring. Life was rough at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't really go home to see your family too much. Locked in your house a lot, and so that definitely is a recipe for disaster. I mean, this is just kind of going off a tangent. You look at any sort of serial killer, anything like that, all of it starts with social isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's literally what that was. It sucked. It was completely pointless for us to do any of that. But it was I had to deal with it. And I just tried to focus on myself at that time. And I wasn't too worried about a season or not, just because I was going through a bunch of other stuff, trying to get acclimated to school, try to enjoy where I was. So I wasn't too worried about, if we had a season or not. We were going to be training either way. And yeah, I didn't let it bother me too much.
What was there ever a time in that year where you thought, hey man, I don't want to, I want to go back home, or this isn't worth it?
Oh, I mean, yeah, you could talk to any of my roommates, my coaches, from probably October all the way until January. It was I don't even want to compete. I don't want to wrestle. I want to go home. I was thinking about transferring just because I wanted to be closer. But I think all of it was a combination of bad timing with coming to college during COVID. So that was hard. And the fact that, I had never really been away from home, and probably had the worst freshman year experience probably in a very long time of any class in college. So I had to give it time. I had to trust, and the fact that I had just the best teammates, the best coaches to, bring me up when I was down, would definitely not be here if I didn't have those type of people around me. And that's why I love it here. It's just because I have amazing people.
So you go through that freshman year undefeated in the regular season. You guys are just kind of conference matches at that point. I think you were 13-0.
Mhm.
You lose in the NCAA tournament, managed to get back and get third place. I mean, at the end of the year, are you were you pretty happy with how everything worked out? Had you kind of turned a corner at that point?
Yeah, near the end of the year, I started to realize that like why this is the place for me and why I love it again. And I was fully prepared. I was ready to win a national title, but God's plan isn't always what you want. So
Mhm.
uh, definitely was not my time. I competed super hard. I learned so much. I had such a great time. But my freshman year, I took third. Really happy I was able to bounce back from losing, but definitely was not like the guy who won my weight class that year saved his whole wrestling program at Stanford and saved
Yeah.
multiple sports programs. So clearly that was meant to be for them. But I just really took it and I just tried to take all the emotion out of it, and just try to improve specifically physically and mentally. So that was a great learning experience. And I mean, it was fun. Like I got to compete at an NCAA wrestling tournament that I had watched like every single year from like 10 all the way up until I got to college.
Come back your sophomore year, you go 25-0. Oh, by the way, academic All-American in that same year, win a national title. It's tough to get a lot better than that year for you, isn't it?
That was a good time. Felt like I was finally growing into, a better person, uh, a better student, better man of faith, and it all kind of came together that year. And it definitely was. I mean, that was my first NCAA title, and the emotions that I remember from those days, and just the hard work that I put in. Those are something that I probably am going to remember, if not the rest of my life, for a very long time.
Do you remember kind of what went through your head when either right when the match is over or when you're standing up on the podium?
Yeah, I definitely remember like the countdown from, the buzzer. Uh, there's like 13 seconds left, and
Mhm.
I was in on the edge of the mat, and I had him in a front headlock. I was like, I'm not letting him go. Like I'm winning 6-5, and I was on the edge of the mat where my coaches were, and I actually remember him blowing the whistle, and like I just like put my head down, and I was like, man, like lifetime goal, dream, like man, crossed it off. And I just remember like walking over to my coaches and just like being in awe. Like I just wanted to hug them, just be super grateful for them, because like I said, takes a lot of people to put something like that together.
So what's harder, winning the first one or then coming back knowing the expectation is doing it again and trying to get back there?
Definitely the second time.
Yeah.
The first time, you have no pressure. You're a hungry young kid. I mean, I was only my second year in college, uh, and I felt like I'm the one that's got to chase. I got to do the hunt. Now it's like I definitely learned so much this year than I did last year. I'm like, I'm the hunted. The expectation was, I wanted to dominate everything, and I felt like I had to. Um, and that was such a huge mistake of my part thinking that way. I learned real quick, but the fact that I was able to go through such a hard time this year in terms of mentally, physically dealing with injuries, dealing with loss, dealing with not being in my faith as much as I should have. Like it was, man, this year couldn't have been more bumpy in the road, but it could not have just made me improve just as a person and as a wrestler. Like I am so happy about this year. I'm so glad that I lost. I'm so glad that I struggled with injury, all that stuff.
When and this is obviously up to you, but we do this show so people can get to know you guys a little bit more off the mat, off the court, off the field, or whatever. When you're talking about those struggles this year specifically, what do you mean? Is it just mainly wrestling and health, or are you talking about stuff away from that too?
Yeah, it's everything. I mean, definitely health. Like I was having some knee problems early on in the year. Like the first tournament, I kind of tweaked my MCL. So dealing with sitting out, and that's not something that, type A personality kids that love to do what they do. And, I probably didn't handle it in the best of ways sometimes, did some stupid things, but at the same time, it was like, I learned, what not to do. I learned how to improve. I wasn't, like I said, there was a time where I was like down in the dumps just because of injury. I was, struggling. I couldn't get through a practice without feeling tons of pain. And I wasn't, praying about it. I wasn't reading my scripture or going to church as much as I should. So now it's like, those are the things that are honestly more important to me than just, the results in the competing, because, I'm going to compete and I'm going to have these results. But if I can't, be a good person and learn from my lessons, then it's nothing. Wrestling doesn't really, it's not going to be here forever. It's not eternity.
You've only lost 3 matches in college. 2 of them come this year to David Carr of Iowa State, and then I think you probably go into that NCAA tournament knowing, hey, if I can get there, he's going to be the guy waiting across from me. So what kind of motivation was that at NCAA's trying to get back and beat the only guy who's beaten you in the last 2 years?
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of long conversations, a lot of work being done after these losses. And I really I trusted my coaches. I trusted, my training partners. I trusted my training. And I was really looking forward to the opportunity to wrestle again. But my weight class was like extremely, extremely difficult. So there was a part of me that was like, I got to win 4 matches against some really good opponents to get there. And so does he. So it was really one match at a time. But once I walked off the mat on that semifinal match and I saw that he was going to be the one, I was like really excited. I was like, all right, you get another shot.
What is it like between matches in wrestling? I mean, how much of the work is obviously the physical stuff, and how much are you going back, like looking at those previous matches and studying the guys you're going to be facing on film?
Definitely a combination of both. Like I was watching film on the 2 matches that I had lost. I'm watching film mainly on, what I need to do better. Just because that's for me, that's always been how I've thrived and how I've gotten better. But yeah, definitely just little things that I need to switch up. When you're in a tournament, it's hard to change, a lot. So you're just looking for the little mental switches to think a little differently, or a little, place my hand here, not there, or step to the left instead of the right. So those are those little things in between matches or leading up to a tournament with shorter time spans.
For somebody like me that's not super educated on wrestling, we can watch a wrestling match and think it doesn't look like there's a ton going on here, right? So tell me, when you're going through that, first of all, kind of explain the technical factors, and then when can you sense, all right, this is when I take my shot, this is when I've got my opening here?
I mean, that 10,000 hours thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Put in 10,000 hours, you're a master. And I don't even know how many hours I put. I'm putting on a lot. I've almost been at this, going to be coming up on 18, 17 years, something like that. So just obviously, like anything, repetition, constant time in the lab, thinking about it, watching it, living it, just like right what's above my head, living Tiger style. And, that's all of it is a culmination of every little detail in every match.
So you've got 2 more years here left at Missouri if you want to use that extra year, and kind of just big picture, what are your goals, not just for the next 2 years, but then beyond that, wrestling wise or outside of it?
Yeah, outside of wrestling, I just want to continue to get my education in personal finance, and then I really want to get my master's in business. So that's kind of what I'm there for academically. Spiritually, I just want to try to keep growing as the best person that I can be and improve every day in that. And wrestling wise, I'm going to take those 2 years just because I will be in school still. So why would I not? And 2024 Olympic trials, I'm going to try my very best to, make that team. That's been a dream of mine, but also I'm still young. So I'm going to try to always find that next goal in 2028 if that doesn't happen in 2024. So wrestle for probably the next 2 years in college, then a couple years out of college. But after that, I want to move out west. I want to work for a hunting company.
Okay. Is that kind of, my next question was, what do you like to do when you're not wrestling? Is that kind of your big passion?
I got so many different hobbies. I like playing disc golf. I love fishing. I love hunting. I love skateboarding. I've recently been into just cooking a lot. So like I've been making a lot of really good red meat recipes like steaks, tenderloins, all that type of stuff. Yeah, I'm a man of many hobbies, so there's not one thing that you'll be catching me doing.
Now, disc golf, I don't know if you're aware that like Missouri won the national title in disc
Yeah.
golf, so maybe you could get another national championship.
I was definitely on Twitter, looking at that. And then there were some reporters talking trash on Twitter, like, oh, it's not a real sport. Like, man, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Disc golf's way harder than you think. Like, yeah, they were downplaying it, like, oh, that's not a big deal. Like, that was so stupid. But
you win a national title in anything, it's kind of a big deal, right?
Like, so that was awesome. I definitely followed that. And the thing about Columbia is it's got one of the highest rated courses in the entire country, right around here, Harmony Bend's course, which is like right by the mall. Okay. Yeah, so definitely that. But I have a dog here, so I love spending time with her, training her. I like to do so many different things. But definitely once hunting season comes, I'm out in the woods.
You mentioned the cooking. I'm curious, like, especially when your sport is so driven by everybody knows, hey, you got to weigh this at this time. Like, how closely do you have to watch the nutrition? And do you ever just get to, like, maybe in the off season, just get to be like, you know what, I'm just going to go have 3 pieces of cake and cut loose, and I don't have to pay attention to what I eat today?
Yeah. I think all wrestlers can vouch and say that when we're out of season, we all get fat for a while. And yeah, I mean, I don't really cut a lot of weight just because it's hard to cut a lot of weight and compete at a high level. Some people can do it. I personally it's not something that I find necessary. It's more about just being good at wrestling. Like that's much more important than, seeing how much weight you can lose to wrestle and have an advantage. But yeah, I love cooking. I love all that stuff. So, I have to watch my weight a little bit, but it's not like to the point where I can't eat for extended periods of time, where I can only eat like a certain amount.
Right. Last thing for you, Keegan, and appreciate you taking the time with us. Mizzou is now finished in the top 10 in the country 8 years in a row. Everybody knows what Coach Smith has built here. And I think all fans and all you guys obviously would love to eventually kind of be that number one team. What's the step that this program's got to take to get from, 5th or whatever to atop the podium?
Belief is going to be a huge thing. We have such a talented team. We have such a hardworking team. It's going to be belief that we can do it. We were 5th this year, and there's 2 matches that we needed to win to take top 4 and take a team trophy home. So there's going to be belief and going to be, putting it together at the right time. Like not putting it together for conference, not putting it together for duels, but putting it together at the very end when it matters and winning those close matches. So it's such a difficult thing to do, though.
Oh, no question. And certainly you guys have been now going all the way back to Ben through you guys, the most successful program here at Mizzou for a long time. And I know a lot of people are hoping to see that one more step for Coach Smith's legacy and all that. But appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and best of luck.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, that is Keegan O'Toole, 2-time national champion Missouri wrestler, joining us on the True Tiger Insider this week. Thanks to Keegan for his time, and for all you guys watching, if you do want to find out more about Every True Tiger Foundation, you go to everytruetiger.org. You can go to our message board and find out how to donate specifically to powermizzou.com's little mini collective within that bigger collective. We're going to talk with a different athlete every week. As a Power Mizzou subscriber, you get early access to these. We'll release them as public podcasts about 24 to 48 hours later. But by being a subscriber to our site, you can watch them first. So once again, thanks to Keegan O'Toole. This is Gabe DeArmond, and we will talk to you next time on the True Tiger Insider.